Greetings, student. This is Professor Nguyen. I want to give you instructional support on what you need to do for the assignment number 3 in week 7, focusing on startup funds for startup businesses. So for this assignment, you are asked to write about a 1 to 2 page startup funds that you can potentially use on your business plan. So the specific learning outcome associated with this assignment is to recommend a plan for identifying sources to fund a business. When business owners or budding entrepreneurs decide to open up a business, he or she or they need to think about how he or she or they going about to fund his or her or their businesses. So where will the money come from? How will you as an entrepreneur spend the money to pay for liability? What is your working capital? What funds that you will not use? The pros and the cons about certain financial options that you may or may not use. So for this assignment, write a 1 to 2 page discussing the strategy for obtaining startup funds and working capital that you as an entrepreneur, you as a startup business owner, so you need to talk about the startup funds. This is a part of your business plan. The reason why entrepreneurs or startup owners need to have a business plan is to find funding. To have funding, you need to have a plan so investors can look at what you talk about and be able to give you the financial support. So therefore, you need to describe the startup funds and working capital that your business would require and explain in general terms how the funds will be allocated. You, as an entrepreneur, decide to open a business. You have a budget. In the first 3 months, what funds will be used for what? You need some funding for remodeling a shop that you potentially rent. You have a budget for getting the supplies and resources. You have a budget for marketing your products or services. So what are the funds and where are these funds come from? And how are you going about to obtain the funds that you need to start up a new business? So you need to describe the potential funding sources and your working capital. Explain the strategy for obtaining the necessary funds. Then you need to identify at least 2 common sources of funding that you potentially reject. So therefore, you have 3 components that you need to focus on addressing: your startup funds and working capital. You have to explain that. You can put that together in 1 paragraph. Then you also need to explain how you go about to obtain the funds. Then you need to discuss 2 financial sources that you as a budding entrepreneur will not use and why you will not use. So this is the writing instructions for the assignment number 3 on the startup funds. Alrighty then. So you have to describe the startup funds and working capital that your startup business would require and explain in general terms how the funds would be allocated. So as you know, startup fund for a company is important. And this process can be daunting, but rewarding if you as an entrepreneur plan accordingly. While a great business is crucial for founders, financing is one of the most important elements of a company uh, that needs to succeed. So this is a very important component of a business plan. So it is also an important part for a success story of an entrepreneur. Be able to know what funds you need to use and what funds you need for growth and what funds you need for paying your liabilities. So starting your own company can be daunting, but rewarding process. So you need to be able to have funds. Where are the funding sources? So potential startup funds can include personal funds. So the money that you save in the bank, your savings account, your personal checking accounts, you have a passion for opening a beauty salon business. You don't have the fund, you don't want to borrow loans, you might sell a house. So selling a house is a strategy for obtaining the funding source to start your business. Venture capital, partners financing, angel investor, crowdfunding, grants, friends, line of credit, and loans. These are the potential funds that budding entrepreneurs can use to start a new business. So then, after you identify the funding sources, what is the working capital? So you need to have a working capital with a budget. What is your allocation of the startup fund that you need? Well, the first 3 to 6 months, you need money to pay bills, to pay employees if you are going to have, to pay taxes, to pay necessary fees. So what is your working capital? So working capital affects many aspects of your business, from paying your employees and vendors to keep the lights on and planning for sustainable long-term growth. In short, working capital is the money available to meet your current short-term obligations. So you start a new business, you have the funding source. Then from the funding source, what is your allocation for you to use? You need to use some money to pay the workers. So you have to have a budget. That is your working capital. What you will use to pay for your debts, your liabilities. To make sure your working capital works for you, you need to calculate your current levels, your projected needs of liabilities. Consider ways to make sure you have enough cash. Just like a business, some businesses have petty cash. So the petty cash pay for some things short term. So you need to focus on this. So again, the first part is to describe your funding source. What funding source you will use. Be able to identify a minimum of 2 funding sources, 2, and talk about it. And tell the strategy that you will use to obtain these funds. And from the funding sources, what is your allocation? This is your working capital. So, okay. Now, for example, a strategy for obtaining the necessary funds can mean like this. For example, if you want to invite venture capitalists, these are individuals who have the money and they are willing to take a risk to invest in a startup business. And they don't do that for free. They want an ownership of equity from your business. So if you make money, they earn some equity. They're going to make some money. So that's venture capital. They understand the risk. Chances are you may become successful. If you are successful, they will earn some shares. They will have some money. But if you don't do so good, you end up losing money. They understand. That's why they are venture capitalists. So this is the strategy for obtaining the necessary funds. For example, you are interested in looking into venturing out venture capital. So what is your strategy for this? Well, first you need to have a preliminary business plan. So in the preliminary business plan, you need to have a specific business model. What is the specific business model that you will need so you can generate the funds to pay for your bills, to pay you, and to save for future growth? So what is your preliminary business plan? Would it be retail? Would it be subscription? Would it be pay as you go? What is your specific business model? And a potential customer base. So this potential customer base is not the target audience. You are not advertising. You are trying to identify the target market segment. Who will be your customers? Who will be your primary customer? Who will be your secondary target markets? So your strategy for obtaining the necessary funds start with having a preliminary business plan. In the preliminary business plan, you need to have a business model, and we have talked about that. Then you need to have a potential plan for getting the customers. You open a business and you don't know your target market, then you defeat the purpose of opening a business because no one will come to your business. Then you need to find an investor. That is important. You don't have an investor and you don't have money, you can't open a business. After finding an investor, share the business plan. Now, venture capitalists focus on the dollars. You have to be able to sell the business plan to the venture capitalists. Then you have to expect to go through a review with potential investment review. So the venture capitalists will look into the documents, will look into your strategy and be able to see how realistic your business plan is. Can your business plan turn into viable source of potential income? Will there be a return on investment? If your business plan doesn't sound like it's a good idea for return on investment, they will walk away. So you will see some scrutiny. So you have to be able to go through a review with potential investment review and be expect to take criticism so you can make the improvement, and hopefully the venture capitalist can approve your proposal. So once you go through the review, if successful, you now have to plan out the terms of agreement for investment. How many percent? It's just like think tank. How many percent you will willing to share, you willing to give up? What percentage of ownership you willing to give up? Then if the two parties or multiple parties, including you, agree, then you move forward contracting so you can have the fund. So once you have the fund, you can understand that you have the funds and you can set aside a working capital. So it's going a cycle. So once you have identified your startup funds, identify your strategy for obtaining the funds, talk about your potential working capital, then you have to discuss two funding sources that you will reject. Some budding entrepreneurs open a business using their personal finance. They don't want to obtain a loan because a loan they have to pay back with interest. The profit that they generate from their business can help them with potential growth. But if they use that profit to pay the interest of the loans, then they don't have anything left to invest for future growth. So there's a pros and a con for obtaining certain funds. So there you go. You have three major parts. The first part is identify your startup funds. How you will go about to obtain the funds. After you obtain the funds, what is your working capital? Remember, this is your business plan. You have to plan out. Do not explain what is a working capital. I don't need to read your writing that say working capital is blah, blah, blah. Do not define these terminologies. Your job is to identify potential startup funds and talk about them. Again, do not, by any means necessary, do not explain or define these terms. If you do that, you are not writing your business plan. I'm reading your paper. The potential investor reading your business plan, they understand these terminology. They don't need for you to define what these mean for them. They want you to talk about your business plan. So here, I included a sample paper that I wrote for a potential business. Here I have 3 paragraphs. I have a cover page. You guys need to make sure that you have a cover page. As long as you are a college or a university student and you are writing a paper or an essay, you have to have a cover page. Whether you use MLA, Chicago, APA, you have to have a cover page, and different writing style have a different way to write a cover page. We are using the Strayer writing standards. So our cover page is a page of its own. You need to start with your business title, your title of the assignment, your name, the instructor name, the school, and of course the date. And you need to make sure that it is center, font 12, not 13, not 18. Don't use purple or yellow, just solid black font. Don't try to be fancy, because when you submit a business plan to a potential investor, they don't want to look at fancy business plan. They want to have a standard, which is font 12 Times Romans and black font. You don't need to be fancy. Use the standard. All right, so I have the first paragraph. As you can see here, I discuss about a potential, I introduce my business concept. I talking about the potential funding source that I use, which is a commercial loans. And I discuss about my working capital right here, funding which is used as a working capital during the first 3 months of operation to pay for labor and expected operating procedures. My second paragraph, I will talk about the funding sources. So I'm talking about the 2 potential force with strategy, with working capital. I integrate them, so I don't have to have separate paragraph, but I integrate them. Then the final paragraph, I talking about my potential funds that I will not use. Remember, a paragraph needs to have a minimum of 4 complete sentences, and each paragraph begins with an indentation. You have to indent. Using the space bar, you indent 5 to 7 spaces. If not, use the tab key. You need to use align left margin, not center, not justify. Align left. All right. So you can see here, I already posted the sample paper, which I don't have to do it, but I did it already for you. Now, the do's and the don'ts. As I have graded 2 assignments already, I have seen many common things like not capital words and capital words when they're not supposed to. So I want to give you the do's and the don'ts. And one important thing is you have to read the instruction for writing. You don't read the instruction and you don't understand what you're supposed to do. Read the instruction, please. Read for understanding. Use a highlighter. Highlight the key important words. What is that you're supposed to do? Okay, so follow the instruction writing, the writing instructions, and write according to the instruction. This assignment is about the startup funds and nothing else. Do not Google and copy an assignment and write. Write according to the instruction. Address each component. You have the startup funds with the strategy, working capital, and rejected funding source. You didn't mention, if you do not mention these elements, you didn't have a paper. You cannot earn full points for them. Write from your point of view using I, my. This is your business plan. And I don't get it. If this is your business plan, why are you using you? Writers use you as a second person point of view to write manuscript to explain how to do something. A car manual, a cookbook. This is where authors or writers use you to tell potential chef or an interest person who like to cook to do something. You are writing a business plan, explaining your position, why you have this business, the funding that you need, the business model that you use. This is your business plan. So use I, my. And if you want to address a general public, use entrepreneurs, use business owner, and then use the pronoun antecedent there. So it can match, but not you and your. Stick to the one point of view. I have seen people use I and then we. Unless you have a partnership, then you discuss we. Otherwise, this is your business. There's no you, there's no we. Stick with I and my. Proofread. I don't see how you're not proofreading your paper. You have access to Grammarly. You have access to tutor.com. Use proofreading so you can proofread your mistake. For example, you always capital I. When there's a proper noun, you capitalize the first letter of a proper noun. If it's not a proper noun and it's a common noun, you don't capitalize. Put a period at the end of a sentence. Don't write a paragraph that is so long and you have one period at the very end and the whole paragraph keep having on commas and commas and commas. You end up having what you call run-on sentences. So proofread your paper. Use Strayer's writing standards. And if you need access to the standards, go to your class module and click on the writing standards, or you can visit the link that I posted up here. You need to cite the source. If you go to Google, Yahoo, or Bing, or whatever sources you look up, and at any time you look up a source and you start writing to enhance your argument, you need to cite. If not, it is called plagiarism. And plagiarism is against the academic integrity policy of Australian University. So cite the source, cite accordingly. the Australia writing standard makes citing so easy. So for example, you decide to use 3 sources. You need to list the person first name and last name, follow with a period, follow with a year, follow with the title, and then the URL. Do not just list the URLs. That is not how you write a source. Make an effort to write the paper according to the standards and not just how you want to write. You are not going to improve if you keep doing the same thing over and over. So make an effort. All right. So as you can see here, I'm using the writing standard sample from the link here. As you can see here, this person cited number 1 inside the parenthesis. When you cite a source from Australia writing standard, you don't need to do a whole lot. You just put parenthesis, source 1, close parenthesis, and the citation goes inside the period, not after the fact. Then in your source, we use the word sources, not references, or work site. We are not using MLA or APA. So use our writing standards. We use the word sources, and we list them in numeral order, 1, 2, 3. And you need to list them in numeral order according to their last name. So as you can see here, Holmes and Snyder. Well, because this site 2 doesn't have a last name, so they use the first letter. Okay, so you don't have to list in alphabetical order, but you can just put them in numeral order. So if I'm reading the paper and I see source 1, I can go to source 1. I can verify that. So that's as very easy as match. Do not include the source if you do not cite. And if you do that, it's going to make your writing having a higher matching of the original source. It's going to detect that you use some source, but you didn't cite. It's going to cause a paper to have higher matching source, which is not good. If you look up a source, you need to cite. Okay? So do cite the sources with verifiable reference sources to make sure your working capital work for you, okay? So you need to cite the source. Now, let me see. This part should not be a part of that. So you need to cite the source. Now, here go the don'ts. Don't state up the topic. So last week, I was grading a paper and we were talking about target markets. So I have students write about many different things other than the target markets. So you need to stick to the topic. At any time you are confused or don't know what you're supposed to do, contact the professor. I am available to support you. Avoid using use. Don't use you. Don't use contraction. Academic writing, try not to include contractions like don't. Avoid fragment. Incomplete sentences. Avoid run-on sentences. Don't use too many commas when it's not necessary. End your sentence. Have a variety of sentence, short sentence, long sentence, but you need to end. Don't copy and paste the writing instruction. This is not answering the question. You are writing a paper. You need to synthesize the idea and put into a paper. If you copy and paste the instruction, you are answering the question. Well, you are answering the question, but copy and paste the instruction is not writing. And when you copy and paste the instruction, it costs your paper to have higher percentage of matching the original source. So don't do that. That is not a good way to write. Plagiarize. Don't plagiarize. If you look up an idea and you use that idea to enhance your argument, cite. You want to give credit to people who publish their work. So for this week, we're talking about intellectual property. You are a potential business owner, so don't copy and paste. Give people credit when credit is due. Okay, so if you have further questions about the assignment number 3, focus it on the startup funds. Contact Professor Nguyen via my email or my contact information posted in the course module.